it was always like, "Oh, you should have seen what it was like, and it was way better than it used to be," which is not a great argument. And it was always like, "Oh, so this is abuse light? Great. I'm so excited."
And that was like one of the safest, most meritocratic environments I have ever been in. What goes on behind those creaky old boathouse doors? Who's invited and who feels comfortable? Who's safe and who thrives? Who stays and why do some leave? And why do rowers do some of the weird things they do? Let's talk about rowing culture. And this time, let's do it from the perspective of the third boat. I'm Jen Butler. This is the Third Boat Podcast. This just in, there's a new documentary coming out about the football coach, Don James, called The Dawgfather. For the non-Huskies, dog is spelled D-A-W-G. In a happy coinkydink, Joel McHale will be narrating that documentary. It premieres at the Gig Harbor Film Festival, September 27th. So this is why it's complicated. This is why there was a delay. And I have recorded the intro to this interview so many times. I have decided I'm not going to put anything in context, explain, or excuse anything. I'm going to respect the story as it's told to me. But here's what Joel did that kind of threw me. I don't know if I threw a wrench in his little jokes, his little narrative. He certainly threw one in mine. I had the storyline all planned out, and it's like a braid. This story is like a braid, and once you've braided your hair, if it's long, if someone comes and takes out a little bunch at the top, if you snag it on something, it undoes the whole damn braid. Damn it, Joel. So I had to take my braids out, rebraid them, and it's actually because he's a good listener. He listened to me. I tried to listen to him, and that just totally screwed everything up. And now, part 2 of my chat with Joel, the complicated part. I witnessed an apology
Oh.
that's what everybody says. It's like shock from the 70s for behavior in the 70s. And it was very interesting to me. And I reached out to the guy who wrote the apology, and it was directed towards the women and how they were treated when they tried to take their space at the Conabear. And it was really interesting. And
So it was sexism on top of, so it was like the regular hazing, and then they put the sexism and sexual harassment.
right,
What
right.
a what a wonderful sport.
Yeah, yeah,
Just
yeah. So
un
I have this theory, like in the 80s, there was like, like this trope of like lightning hits a guy while he's drinking a Coke and then history changes forever or something like that, that kind
Yes.
of, yeah, dubious science thing. And I have this theory that in the 70s, there was a bad hazing incident between the men and the women. And I feel like that affected both of our cultures
Mm.
for 50 years because my experience was very different than yours. But I also had an oral history that was handed down during initiations that was really very much about we worked so hard for this. We just take a little bit of the hill next time. We look forward. We make it better for the next women behind us. And it was very much like you just keep taking the hill. You just keep doing persistence. And now that I see where that came from, because I
Mm.
suspect you weren't told that no matter what, take the hill, take the shit, but look out for those poor Ted White guys that are coming behind you that need a chance too. Like I suspect that was not what you were told.
No, I mean, I didn't get that. I didn't get far enough, uh,
Yeah.
I think for that to stuff to happen or for guys,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
no senior came up to us afterwards to Jason and I were like, "Hey man, sorry, but" it was all of them. It was 11 versus 2. So,
Jesus, yeah.
it was the, uh
11.
it was the senior boat or whatever that surrounded us. So, I don't know who else in there would be saying anything, "Hey, sorry,
Right.
apologetic, for what," but that said, no, 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 but yeah, Jason and I both quit after that, and,
Sure.
uh, but, I was trying to think of I did get like, in the fraternity, that had some hazing, it was more joking around shit, like
Yeah.
it was always like, "Oh, you should have seen what it was like, and it was way worse than this is way better than it used to be," which is not a great argument.
Right,
And
right.
it's always like, "Oh, so this is, abuse light? Great." I'm so excited that this is I don't know what to compare it to other than your threat or your, your so, yeah, anyway, so what do you think the incident happened in the '70s that the women did is there any word on what it was?
Well, yeah, yeah. So, what is also really fascinating to me, because I've started to think a lot more about boomer men than I normally would, but and their perspective is at least a couple guys have written about the experience and extreme remorse for what they put some of the women through, and um, they've actually written about it. And one guy even wrote a like a Title IX screenplay, and they're really talented and interesting writers to me. But also just this fact that like one of the guys said, "Yeah, I've been talking to some of the women over the last 10 or 15 years about what they went through," and I thought that was just fascinating to me.
Hmm, and,
Yeah,
I mean, with that I'm just assuming it was lots of sexual assault on top of the
yeah, I don't. So I know that some women were peed on.
oh my
So
gosh,
this is yeah.
you gotta be kidding me.
Oh, no, no. So no, and this is not the only university where that's happened in rowing. And it actually, I know stories where that happened, but it wasn't being peed on the women, it was peeing on their door. If they tried out for rowing, their dorm room door would get peed on. So, yeah, really sophisticated, fellows here. But
Unbelievable.
what is know that there was, like, a hazing or an initiation, and that's where I kind of suspect, like, the kind of weird science history change happened, because I feel that after that event, it was just all about it. This is in my imagination, right? That's why our history was different.
Yeah,
But I do know that safety, personal safety, was very important to my coaches. They didn't use the same language that they use today, of course, but I know that that was just like I felt completely like an equal to the men's team, despite them having the Conabear, and we were never made to feel less than or anything like that. And I suspect it's because a lot of those coaches either went through that experience or they came on and witnessed it and were like, this has got to stop.
yeah,
And this could not happen to these women. And they're probably more concerned with protecting women, perhaps, than concerned about
yeah,
um,
man,
men. Yeah.
man, yeah. Well, I guess they're I guess some evolution is good for they're like,
Right.
"Hey, treat the women beat the shit out of that guy, that's fine, throw him in the water."
Well, that's it though, right? Because, like, I am not convinced, like, I feel like we got the better culture out of it. Like, if that, like, schism
Also,
really
I
did
mean
happen.
and it sound I mean, I'm assuming, also the senior women's boat didn't take any shit, and that don't I'm assuming. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean there's also probably the initiative of the senior women who were like, "Don't fuck with us," and,
Oh, yeah, but
that's right.
yeah, the first women, they kinda had to take a lot of shit though, and then
Oh,
they
yeah,
got
yeah, after
stronger.
after the coaches felt bad. I mean, what a
Yeah,
fucking so dumb,
I
so dumb,
know.
so, yeah, pointless.
But yeah, but I do think it's pretty interesting because as a woman, that was, like, one of the safest, most meritocratic environments I've ever been in.
That's
You
great.
know? Like, you're judged for your numbers,
Yeah,
for who's
yeah,
popular,
yeah,
who's not, what you look like. You can work harder, and if you work harder, you'll see it.
yep,
But I feel like See, I don't think that that was particularly healthy for some of the men. Like, I wouldn't want my son to have the experience you had, and
No. I'd
y
rather have my son go into football than
yeah.
open him up open himself up to extreme injury, but, yeah, if it would have been a I it was football was such a better experience, and,
Uh-huh.
uh, such a better experience, and I it's yeah, I as I said, it was like night and day. I mean, there was lots of screaming and yelling and, like, working our asses off and getting our asses kicked and coaches
Sure.
and all that, but I was like, "Oh, we're doing we have a target, and that target is the USC Trojan, and
Yes.
we will eat and drink their blood if we need to win." Uh, for and that's where I learned how to really work and really go, "Oh, I can this is how you get shit done." And to this day, I, like, appreciate that so much, but yeah, the rowing, it's just these little I don't know what to compare it to, but, fuck, so you've said it has gotten better, it's still going?
I'm assuming it's gotten a lot better, and then, there have been kind of incidents throughout the years that you could just read about in the press that
Mhm.
you're like, "Oh, what is going on over there?" But my son started rowing,
Oh,
and I spoke to some parents and some coaches and said, "Okay, what's the culture like?" He's not at the UW, he's too young, but I kinda wanted to know, culture is everything in rowing.
yeah,
I can't speak to this college world, but at least for teenagers, hazing and that kind of thing, it's not done.
that's great.
At least, yeah, and I ask him about it too.
Good.
Which is I don't wanna be that person, like, that parent that's like, "I did this for it, so I know what you're going through," but, so far it's been really great for him. Like, drop him off, I'm like, "I'm dropping you off at the pain cave, honey." Like,
Yeah.
but but, but then I did see, looking at, some of the UW athletic information, there's a compliance report for hazing, and it looks like there was some compliance issues in November of 2023 with both the men's and the women's, teams at the
So they
UW.
so what, they anonymously complain on this on a website, or they
No, this was like, they have, like, a compliance office now, and
Oh!
so they list out, what kind of, com they don't get into the specifics of the issues, but they have a system where they have to do some sort of remediation or training, and this is for the fraternities as well, and sororities, and the other athletics as well,
Hmm.
so I don't know what that was. I do think it's really interesting. I feel like the press didn't pick up on that, and it's just kind of this open URL, with all this information and,
Yeah, it's, like you said, like, oh, George Clooney was in town and Boys in the Boat was coming out, so I mean, it also could be yeah, I mean, maybe it's just because maybe
I
I was like,
don't
well, it is George Clooney, so, that's a
know.
big deal, like, so no matter if he was making any kind of movie in Seattle, it would be a big deal.
Yeah,
Uh, uh, maybe the incident wasn't, I don't know, specific enough, or
right.
hopefully, hopefully it will get I mean, it should get press. I mean, that shit needs to get called out, and it's
Yeah,
and people go like, "Oh, those poor little athletes," and I was like, yeah, well, whatever."
well, yes,
It can be very dangerous, but
but it can be because, like, I've thought about this, and people are gonna be like, "Who cares if, the one percenters are bullied?" Because it is still very
yeah,
much, a boarding school sport or a high class sport, particularly in the men's teams. There's a lot of opportunity, that's just kind of maybe more equitable for women. But in the men's team, they're getting more and more concentrated because they're not NCAA and they don't have kind of the Title IX balancing to factor into.
right.
So they're in the Ivy Leagues, they're at the UW. And then if you look at the rosters, it's all these boarding school guys or Europeans and British people. And it's interesting in this rowing world, they kind of go back and forth between Britain and the UW or Britain and Harvard, and, there's great people there, but also jerky behavior over there, and then the consequences of that over there are not you get expelled from school, it's more like someone's knighthood might be threatened, so,
Yeah,
like Sir Twinkle Bottom at OBE or whoever, he doesn't want, obviously, his alma mater to
Well, as we all know, Sir Twinklebottom was really so egregious. Uh, that's really funny. What an
Absolutely.
Yeah, what an odd obviously, it's a tiny sport. I mean, I don't
Yeah,
be there's hazing in tons of sports, obviously,
yeah,
but, UW has a great team and always it usually does, and so it
yeah.
does, more attention, and boy, yeah, dicks.
Dicks. But yeah, but see then in Britain, for example, um, and like the guys that come out of Oxford, those guys, they get jobs with Sir Twinkle so that they become
Right.
the leaders, right? So it's not necessarily that I'm white knighting for people in this 1% sport. It's more that look at all the passes you're giving to people that maybe we don't want as our leaders. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? That's like kind of where I think the danger is for
Yeah.
larger society. Yeah.
Well, England was the one of the more recent empires, so,
Yeah, right?
and that is, a lot of that culture, a lot of their education was, that was built on, like, here's how you run an empire, and,
Yeah.
uh, and obviously entitled and privileged, like
Yeah.
nobody's business, and then it shifted over to America.
Well, I don't know if you ever read, like, Moab is My Washpot by Stephen Fry, but, I think he's so funny. But anyway,
Amazing.
he wrote about the boarding school culture a couple times, and one of the scenes is he's writing about kind of the situation where these boys grew up in these boarding schools, and then later on, they're, like, in parliament looking across at each other, and they totally hazed each other and all that stuff, and then they're, like, these esteemed, 60-year-old men looking across at
God.
basically the guy that they totally did some gnarly naked stuff with. So it's really
Ooh.
weird, isn't it?
Yes, it's really strange,
Yeah.
and then it's a lo d it's part of it becomes a part of the culture of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
schools, and it's like it's expected, and then, there's sadly kids that they're taught that, and then they go, oh, I'm pissed that this happened to me, and now I'm gonna do it,
Right.
and because 'cause I'm so angry, and I wanna impress my friends, and
Right.
oof.
And then what I've also find is interesting is, like, not every year of hazing tradition in places like this are the same. Sometimes maybe you get a nice group of kids. Sometimes you get a group with, like, a hidden sadist or something, and then it's
Yeah,
particularly bad. And so it's a really kind of a dangerous
yeah, because
thing
it's
that it even exists, right?
yep,
Like, yeah. Yeah, it's
and
interesting.
none of it has to. Because I remember I was talking to this guy in the army, and the boots he was wearing were the kind of this, suede, and I was like, "I thought you guys shined all your boots," and he was like, "Oh, no, 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 this one general," like, yeah, he just hated polishing, so he just changed the boots. And I was like, "Oh, I guess you can do that." Then you just change the whole thing and be like, "Enough of this fucking shoe shining. We're gonna focus on something. We're gonna." And but I thought that was so. The chains can be broken, but yeah,
I think the chain needs to start at Sir Twinkle-Bottom level,
yes,
because the money is from the Twinkle-Bottoms of this world, like the older man, the boomers.
yep,
Like, if you look at the administration of this sport of rowing and of, the folks that have influence in the universities in general, they're they're like the older alumni are at the peak of their powers, like
yeah,
a little older than us, and I feel like it would be really powerful if they broke well, I'm starting to call it Rowmerta, rowing plus omerta, but if they just broke the silence of it and just was like, "We did that, but it was wrong, and you guys need to not do it."
yeah. Has anyone done? I mean,
Just these guys from the '70s I think are so amazing.
that's great. And were they UW guys or were
Yeah,
they? Yeah,
yeah.
oh, that's great. But no one's from Harvard or from yeah, all the
No.
Ivy League has they no.
No, no, yeah, and God knows what the Winklevoss twins did, right?
Right. Get screwed out of that Facebook money. Women's side, it's not nearly the same.
No,
The
no,
board,
not at all.
And that's across the board or across
Across
or
the board, I think. Like, so I've been speaking to some other women my age and younger, at other clubs, and it's interesting because they had some similar stories of being told specifically by the older women and having it handed down that it was a really raunchy, hard fight, keep taking the hill, persist and, think about the crew that's coming behind you, make it just a little better for them, give
Mm,
them a chance and help the folks that you can help. So it's which is a different message than I feel some of the guys have received through rowing. So I kind
yeah,
of legitimately feel like we may have received the better culture here because like, this is kind of reach, but there's this crisis in mental health for men right now. And in theory, sports should be a healthy place and that should be great. But I can't imagine hazing helps that, right?
no, not at all, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I no, yeah, no, well, that yeah, there's yep, the machismo and the masculinity is all fucking crazy, and, it it all just makes for, sickens the situation. There's something about the machismo, I don't understand it, and,
Right.
but, well, how great that the women have broken the chain and don't allow it, and there's no, yeah, there's no reason. How do we fix it? It starts with it starts at the top, and boy, Bob Ernst sure wasn't helping.
Yeah, but I think, like, so this is like again with the parallel universe is Bob Ernst was incredibly supportive to me and the women, right?
Hmm,
Like, right.
yeah,
So he came in, he was one of a few male coaches that were like, these women are awesome. We're going to totally advocate for them. They're great. And, that wasn't your experience with Bob, like,
well, I
obviously.
had
So,
very little contact with him
yeah.
other than when
Yeah.
I was kinda like, "Hey, this is a real bummer," and
Yeah.
then nothing happened,
Yeah.
and so so I had very little contact with him because I was just lowly
Yeah.
freshman, but it was not a, good experience just because the little that I had was like, "Oh, so you're not gonna do anything? Great. Alright, great, wonderful." And, so that's so interesting that I don't know, when did he row at the UW? I don't know.
No, in fact, I think maybe California before the UW, but no, he didn't. I don't believe he rode at the UW.
Yeah.
He was one of those guys who was, I think, possibly a better coach than a rower. I mean, obviously, you would have a different perspective, but yeah, he was there for 40 years, though.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's gotta be the longest in UW history is my guess for coaching.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised at all. And then I don't know that it was a beautiful departure. I think it was apparently pretty rough, but I don't know the details of that. And then um,
Was he
there's just
fired?
kind of I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I think that might have been a cultural thing too. So there you go.
What was the he was fired over
Yeah,
not
if you read the story, it's pretty involved, and so I think, like, if you read the news, you're not gonna get the real story about it, but I think there was probably always tension between him and the administration. Like, rowing doesn't fit really well with some of the, NCAA rules,
uh,
and, um there's just always gonna be a tension there to begin with, and I think he just kinda wanted to write it out as long as he could, and,
no.
I think there might have been a blow up between him and some folks on the women's team because he went back to coaching women, and, um,
Oh,
yeah, there was a blow up there between them and him, and, yeah, that kinda triggered everything.
wow. When was this? How long ago was that?
I think maybe 2016.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, he coach a long time.
He did. So were you friends with any of the women rowers, or do you remember any of the women's team, or did you feel very separate?
It felt pretty separate.
Yeah.
I did not I don't who did I don't, no, I don't think I there was none from my high school that I remember, because I wasn't there that long. It was
Mhm.
pretty
Yeah.
I think I was gone by October, or late October, um, but so, yeah, I didn't, I did not get to know I remember thinking, I mean, it's separate, but living in the I didn't even live in the fraternity that long, but I was
Yeah.
like, how do these guys live like this? And then all the in the sororities, they live it's so nice and clean. And they have decent food and have normal plates. But no, so I don't really remember any of the female rowers. I think I was so there was so much stress happening with
Right, right.
being trying to make teams and do the right rules and whatever shit. And
Yeah.
yeah, uh,
Did you row in high school at all, or
I did. I rode on the in the Mount Baker Club,
Oh, sure, yeah, yeah,
which was great fun. It was great. We were good and it was great, and we had a great time. And the coaches were cool, and everyone that was, we were all there to win. And it was very small, but
yeah.
I really enjoyed it. And boy, did I get in. That's when I gotten pretty. I remember thinking like, nah, I'm in. This is probably the best shape I've ever been in for this type of endurance stuff. And yeah, then obviously being in football shape is completely different. But no, I didn't know. Yeah, I don't even remember. I don't know. I'm
Hmm.
sure you know them better than I do.
I've only kept in touch with a few of them, so I just think that's the other interesting thing as I'm talking to other clubs is, like, some people have kept the men's and the women's team very separate, and then some have kind of kept them together, and it's like, well, what's the better culture? Because there's kind of like a whole, discussion in sports in general, like, should boys and girls do sports when they're little? Like, I don't know if you ever
Right.
played Little League or if your kids did, but,
Yeah, I played every fucking sport you could
Oh,
play.
wow, okay, yeah,
I played
yeah.
everything, and that's all I could do was chase a ball. Chase a ball, throw a ball, catch a ball, hit a ball. That's all I ever wanted to do. I think did you see uh if you type in HBO Real Sports with Brian Gumbel, they did a piece on Norway and how they do youth sports over there.
Oh, okay.
It's it's an amazing 10-minute little piece on Norway and what they do. And they're not allowed to kids are not allowed to keep score until
Oh,
they're 12.
wow.
So all that it's like yeah, I can't recommend it enough. It's on YouTube, I'm pretty sure. But it's interesting. And in Norwegian sports are gigantic, and
Mhm.
they they began to win after they kind of changed their policies. And instead of grinding these kids into the ground in the club teams, and by the time their entire fate is determined by the time they're 13.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh. Yeah, don't get me started. That's crazy to me. I'm seeing a lot of that.
yeah, check it out, and you won't believe it, and how they pay for it. It's crazy, and
Oh.
it's pretty great.
Oh, cool. So, well, I really appreciate you taking the time. I didn't actually, realize I would be talking so much, but,
Oh
you're a
well,
good listener.
I was very curious. So, well, maybe we'll run into each other at that. What is it, Enitai? I don't know. Near the Vashon Ferry, that little
Oh,
group.
yes, Endaline.
End of line,
E
end of line.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, it's yes, named after being the end of the line. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
But thanks for doing the Lord's work and fighting this thing.
Well, I'm just trying to open the conversation up and,
Hey, fuck
maybe
hazing and fuck that culture.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Well,
All right.
I'll let you go, and thank you
Thanks.
again so much. I
Good to
appreciate it
chat
so
with
much.
you, and I hope it works.
My life's been a shitstorm since the day I was born. Oh, innocence left the door early on. I accept what is, I let go of what was, and I have faith in what will be. In
I'm Jen
100
Butler.
years or
This is the
so,
Third Boat
where
Podcast.
you let go
Thank you for
of
listening.
more, but you won't tell. A woman's design is divine. No need to hold hands. One step right and one step you all on my toes. Don't mind me, you can stay just as happy.